everyone, I'm Liz, founder of Worth It and creator of the Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme, which is a programme that integrates coaching psychology and positive psychology and young people's voice-led interventions to create a culture and ethos of well-being and inclusion and belonging in your school by utilising peer-to-peer positive relationships. So what I've done is I've created a fabulous diagram. And I'm going to go through this diagram in depth and talk you through it to explain how the Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme works. The research out there that exists around peer mentoring, which is one of the more popular interventions for pupil mental health and targeted early support around supporting young people, tends to focus on peer mentoring as an intervention. Now, logistically, peer mentoring can be quite challenging to establish in a school or college environment because the matching process and the logistics of just getting one young person out of a lesson to talk and mentor another young person, as well as all the training and all the ethical concerns and all the safeguarding issues and the boundaries and the responsibilities, can be quite complicated. So I've created Wellbeing Ambassadors 11 years ago now. It's in over 200 schools in 20 different countries around the world. I've lost track because there's so many different countries that we're working in. A lot of schools in England. And what I've done is I've been looking at the research around belonging and inclusion and well-being, and also aligning that with the Ofsted framework to create this diagram and model. So I'm going to go into it now, which explains how the Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme supports wellbeing and inclusion. How I've created this diagram is I've looked at the literature around how peer-led pupil voice interventions work and integrated that with some research that a master's student researcher did with our participants on the Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme called Sarah Messenger, thanks to Sarah Messenger, about what young people benefited from the Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme, and have integrated that with the current published literature and synthesized it and then created this diagram. So in 2014 is when we started to do peer-to-peer coaching interventions, and then that evolved into being Wellbeing Ambassadors. Now it's coming back full circle to integrate peer coaching as part of the wider programme for Wellbeing Ambassadors, which I'm really excited about the developments that are coming soon to the programme. I'm going to be talking about them in coming months. So let's start at the bottom and work our way up. So the foundations for an effective peer-led intervention that supports wellbeing and inclusion include the relationships, student-teacher relationships, peer relationships amongst the young people themselves, trust and respect. So whenever you're running a peer intervention, you've got to establish that working relationship, that teamwork of trust and respect amongst the participants in your program. So that is built in as a teaching topic within the content of my program that I've created. Then we have identity and inclusion. So because you're utilising pupil voice and you're asking rather than telling, the young people can bring their own experiences and cultural differences and contextual factors that they're operating in into the conversations around improving wellbeing and inclusion. So their lived experience is really helping shape the program. So this is why we're non-directive and we're asking coaching questions to facilitate conversations around feeling seen and heard in the school environment, a recognition of identity and their lived experience, and a foundation of equity. So making things equitable so that young people can access the intervention. SEND schools have used this program and we just tweak bits here and there. Because you're asking coaching questions, the way I've designed the program is to ask coaching questions to the young people, and the resources almost scaffold and provide a foundation for that. How much or how little you use those or feel that they're appropriate to use with students because of the needs that they have is up to you as an expert who is working with these children and young people who knows them. And then we have a safe and supportive environment, so psychological safety, validation and recognition, and open communication. So all of those things are really important levers and mechanisms to base the peer-led intervention on. We also have a sense of belonging, which we know Ofsted are hot on the case of looking for this in school. The thing that excites me about belonging is you can't tangibly see it, and there's conversations going on around how do we measure belonging, and there are ways to measure it. However, it's something that's in the atmosphere. It's an invisible thread of well-being that connects everyone together. Parts of that are feeling accepted, feeling valued, and connected to the school community. A young lad, I remember doing a Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme, and a young 14-year-old year 8 boy blew me away. He actually said, we just want to be validated. We just want to be seen and heard. And I just thought, wow, at 14, if he wants acknowledgement, that's a really good place to start with any peer-led well-being initiative that is designed to create belonging and connection. So then once we have that foundation of belonging, by the way, this is a feedback loop, and it's a virtuous cycle. So belonging is a foundation, but belonging is also an outcome, and the two sort of go around together in a circle. So then we have the core mechanisms. So the processes behind how the intervention works and the levers that you're pulling that are going to make it effective. So student voice and participation. I believe in co-production, asking young people and children what they think and feel about things so that you can use that to drive change and hear what they're saying. Now, it might not always have the vocabulary or the words, but if you find ways to ask them in an accessible way, or sometimes it's what they don't say, and sometimes it's what they can't tell you, shows you a really good starting point. I remember going into a school and doing some pupil voice work around mental health, and there was so much stigma in what they were saying. The starting point became clear that we need to do some work around anti-stigma and raising awareness about what some of these terms mean. So that was their starting point. So that means that student voice and participation can provide feedback to staff, direct feedback by just listening to what goes on in that particular session, that young people are producing input into policies and process and the way things are done, co-decision making with pupils, and feedback loops. So it's not that you're just taking the feedback and never going back to the young people and explaining what you did with it, that they're noticing the change and it's realistic and appropriate, and that they might have lots and lots of ideas that may not be feasible because of time or financial constraints, but you're going back to them and you're explaining what you did take away, what you did hear, what is possible, and what you're going to implement now, and what you're going to maybe save for the future. We're also using a sense of autonomy and agency, which is allowing choice and self-direction for the young people to feel in control and in charge, asking them, when shall we meet after our initial training? When shall we meet? What are our goals going to be? So goal setting is the next point on this list. What are our goals? What are our actions? Who's going to take what? Who's going to take initiative and ownership over those specific tasks and sub activities that are part of the bigger picture? How I explain to schools is, your young people want to, be trained. So we provide the training into how to be a wellbeing ambassador, which covers these foundations, and then specific positive psychology tools and skills around coping and positive relationships and stress management and positive psychology interventions that are scientifically proven to improve wellbeing. And then we're asking the young people, which one's going to make a difference to the peers in your school? How are you going to put those into action? Who's going to do what? And then how are we going to troubleshoot? How are we going to problem solve? If that didn't go very well, what can we learn from it, and how can we adapt that for next time? So it's going around in this problem solving loop that's increasing self-efficacy and confidence and resilience and motivation and self-directed learning, all the skills for life that Ofsted want you to demonstrate in that kind of extracurricular capacity. And then we have the coaching approach. So as I've already said, it's asking rather than telling, it's active listening, action planning, setting boundaries, developing and cultivating communication skills that are based on coaching approaches that are explicitly taught in the program. And as a result of that, the enabling support systems that make the intervention successful are that the young people are feeding in and leading school wellbeing and inclusion initiatives. So they identify what the initiatives are and then they lead them. So examples are cultural diversity celebration events, mental health, anti-stigma campaigns, suicide prevention. Young people have been involved in suicide prevention, pop-up lunchtime clubs for younger pupils to settle into the school and build those positive peer connections, helping with parents' evening or options choices, or transition from primary to secondary, going into the primary schools, being that friendly face, being visible in the playground, having posters, doing assemblies, making videos, all different things. But the young people themselves, through that sense of agency, autonomy and leadership, have decided what those initiatives are going to be and how they're going to share them with their peers. They also are supporting leadership and policy development, which is part of your effective voice-led approach to wellbeing and inclusion, because you're actually listening to the students, you're doing with them, not to them. So that's really how you're enabling this virtuous cycle to grow and build, and how you're making sure your school meets the range of needs and potential disadvantages that the students in your community or context are experiencing. And you're really utilising from their experiences and from their cultural sensitivities or their learning needs, that you are meeting those needs by listening to them and putting those things in action. Now, those things might take a long time. They might take several academic years to fully embed, but this is utilising pupils' voice to help them feel seen, heard and belong, so that those things can evolve in iterations over time. We're also using training and capacity building. So the Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme is a Train the Trainer toolkit, which increases your capacity as a school to run this intervention over 3 years, and then you can rejoin the programme again for another 3 years. And as it goes on, the students that are the initial cohort of ambassadors can then recruit and train other students, which is also part of that agency and autonomy, which helps with their employability skills and need prevention and personal development and all those things that are really important. It also means that some schools have then, the students have then gone on to create their own training and trained peers. I've also heard them talk about training staff, which I love. That's one of my favourite things, if they do that, is actually saying we're going to get all the teachers together and teach them some wellbeing strategies. Selection and matching of students, so selecting the ambassadors, and if you then decide you're going to do a one-to-one peer coaching intervention, how the matching process happens. Evaluation and continuous improvement. It can be quantitative measurement instruments such as the Sterling Children's Wellbeing Scale, or it can be post-it notes and flip chart. What have you learned and how are you going to put this into action? And that focus groups and more qualitative evaluation, but also getting together your group of ambassadors to feed into a leadership meeting or be part of a student council focus group around children's voice and creating school belonging. And then, so some schools stop at that with the enabling support systems and the ambassador side of the role, so that the young people are leading inclusion from a strategic point of view, and then they're putting those plans into action and leading specific discrete projects or interventions or strategies that are bite-sized and then add up to a picture of initiatives. And then some schools have like a table of all the things that the young people have done and how that's then mapping to wider leadership outcomes or the school improvement plan or strategic priorities for that school or college. And then we have peer coaching at the centre. So what is coming in academic year 26-27 is a bolt-on top-up that will be part of the programme, which is a peer coaching element that's going to be, you can top up your training to add that in. Now that's where we originally started this programme, and because it became logistically challenging, I took that part of it out. And some schools have still used the resources to offer peer mentoring interventions and targeted structured one-to-one support, but I'm putting that back in as a move on from the Wellbeing Ambassador role, which enables the support systems to then, if you want to, if it's realistic for your school or setting, to then have structured peer-to-peer coaching conversations that provide support and guidance and reflective conversations. So there is scope for the intervention as it stands to do that. If you join now, you have access for 3 years, and within the next 6 months that top-up element, that new module, is going to be coming, and I'm really excited about that. And then the outcomes for the intervention are academic achievement and engagement, because if you feel safe at school, if you want to go there, you're more likely to engage and achieve. Psychological well-being, so they're learning skills that are increasing the psychological well-being, whilst also protecting the onset of mental illness, so protecting mental health. That's why this program is an early effective intervention for targeted support for young people who are at risk of developing mental health problems, which is any young person that's not flourishing. But there's specific cohorts within your school community that are more at risk of developing a mental health problem: LGBTQ plus young people, young carers, SEND young people, and children and young people that are known to social services, to name a few. Children whose parents have a diagnosed mental illness. So quite a lot of young people are more at risk. But just generally being a teenager, your well-being does dip, especially if you're a girl at the right age of 16. So using these kind of interventions to protect the mental health that is there and help adolescents ride out adolescence, which is really, really difficult, especially if you're throwing in exams into the mix and academic pressure and all those other things. Like being a teenager is really, really hard. So having a peer that understands you, that wants to help you, create resources and use skills and strategies that are going to protect your mental health and improve your well-being, isn't that great? Like, why would you not want to do that? That also then creates a sense of belonging. So sense of belonging is an outcome as well as a foundation, so it creates that virtuous cycle. We also, because of all the skills that I've covered already, are developing agency and independence and self-direction, self-confidence, self-worth, all important for personal development. And then resilience and life skills. So there's so many parts of this program that help with the general life skills and employability, such as applying to be a wellbeing ambassador or helping recruit further cohorts of wellbeing ambassadors, dealing with disappointment, your project's not going well, dealing with success and celebrating and achievement and noticing the change that you've made, and all those amazing things. So that's this diagram covered briefly. How you do all that is actually in the Wellbeing Ambassadors Programme itself. So you can join the programme to gain all the resources and the training to be able to then establish this process in your school or college or setting. If you're interested in anything I've covered about the programme and you feel that it's a good fit for your school and you're looking for an approach to utilise student voice to lead change and create a culture of belonging and inclusion and well-being and personal development and integrative leadership and all the outcomes for Ofsted, the best thing to do is sign up for my free Wellbeing Ambassadors webinar, and also have a look at my website where I have lots of resources about this programme and how it can benefit your school and the students and young people that you work with. I'll see you again soon.